I have been for probably 5 or 6 years. Before that, I was a software engineer. I was an architect for big companies like Xerox and quite a few others for about, say, 20 some odd years, and retired from that and decided to do photography and visual imagery just for giggles. And this kind of happened, which I'm really excited about. It's the marriage of my two favorite things, is technology and imagery. So I've kind of got back out of the being a photographer type of thing and now leaning back toward technology, but I want to smash the two together. So as a photographer, I'm actually pretty well known. I just got lucky. And there's a big author named Nora Roberts who has like 500 some odd million books in print, and she bought a couple of my images for book covers, which kind of put me on the map. So I teach, just travel around the United States here and teach, because you can see it's day here. It's about 11:30 a.m. So I teach photography, lighting, posing, and then composition. So how to compose the images so they look really nice, everything from color theory to kind of placement of objects, creating emotion or controlling emotion of the viewer, things like this. And part of that is why this is so intriguing to me, because a lot of the AI imagery is so close to the mark right away, where I think a lot of photographers struggle through trying to compose something. You've got your rule of thirds, which is a horrific example of how to compose something, or you've got your rule of phi, or your golden ratio, your Fibonacci. These types of things are what your traditional artists, your painters of old would use, and that's a much better way to lay out or compose an image. So I'm really excited about this kind of thing. Now, to complicate my life a little bit more, I actually started at Stability AI today. Yesterday, I started it kind of officially, with today was my onboarding. And obviously, I really can't talk about anything in there that I'm seeing or doing, other than I'm the lead for QA. So I've done QA as a kind of a lead for it, and then moved into directorship over time. So I professionally break things, is the way you look at it, and then come up with ways to track, the customer satisfaction with those things, the quality of what's produced, and so on. There's a lot of really great things that this company has, and they are way ahead of where I expected them to be. So I'm very, very pleased with everything I've discovered. And obviously, I've only been there a day so far, but the whole process for onboarding and everything else is really great. And they do have open positions, by the way. So check their board to see what they're looking for. But what I want to talk to you today about is, I think, kind of where I come from and what I am looking for in these tools, and what motivates me and moves me forward with kind of my visual imagery. So I'm going to share my screen to kind of give you an idea of where I come from. And you may always feel free to interrupt me if there are questions as we're going, because this is kind of that's what this I want this to be, kind of a question answer, so I can help drive whatever you guys feel you need to do through what I have to show. So feel free to interrupt me as we go. So my website wise, I'll just toss that up on my screen here, and we'll share screen. This is my website. So this is the type of work that I have been creating for a few years now. So a lot of Photoshop. I've known Photoshop for a long time, and very comfortable with that, as well as other painting applications like Rebel or Corel Painter, Art Rage, and Krita. So a lot of really great applications out there. And I've even seen, obviously, Stable Diffusion now has a plugin for Krita. Although Krita, being free, is very exciting for a lot of people, but it is not. It does not have the same market impact as other products would be. Say Rebel 5, for example, has I think pretty much equal to, but it's growing a lot faster, I think, than Krita is. Corel Painter is considered the base for everything as far as painterly products go. So if you're looking for a natural art simulation, so your person likes to paint with a brush or a marker, that product is the king. But it's Corel, and Corel is the same people who are keeping the product like WordPerfect alive, which probably should have died a long time ago. So not really a product that I think an API would be appropriate for or to talk to. I wouldn't even think they know how to do that. But some of these other great painting applications, obviously, Colin has created a plugin for Photoshop already, so we can do Stable Diffusion through Dream Studio's API and now DALL-E 2's API. So that's kind of handled. The problem I think that we're encountering, and the problems that I encounter, is when I'm trying to create the imagery that I want to create inside of Stable Diffusion. And here are a few things that I've created in Stable Diffusion These are pure generations. So these are from one prompt and they have not been modified yet. So these are the ones that I have kind of cherry picked and said, these are the ones I want to work with and kind of take to the next level. I'm not satisfied with just creating a single prompted universe. So to me, I see some people have a great satisfaction with it. And when they're done with it, they do one prompt and they're like, okay, I'm done. I made art. And I'm like, well, I think the part of the fun of it, and as a photographer, some people say, well, you're a good photographer. I say, well, I don't know that I'm as happy being a photographer as I am happy being in Photoshop. Like I'm torn. I like both. So images often contain both elements. I want to post produce as much as I want to take the photo. And you can tell that by my work. Like those things don't look like they're shot in my studio, which is just a giant concrete box with white paper, basically. Everything else is Photoshopped. And I really enjoy that process. And the same goes with AI art. So if I type in a prompt and I get a great picture right away, I don't want to stop there, even if it's like these where they're almost done. Like you look at it and go, well, there's nothing wrong with any one of these. Let's just call it done and do whatever you're going to do with it and make an NFT or print it or just, use it on your phone. Whatever you're going to do with that next step. To me, it's not mine yet. And that's just in my mind. I want to be able to have fun with it. I want to experiment with it and see what I can do with it further. So like the out painting and the in painting intrigue me tremendously. I really enjoy exploring the canvas and not so much say taking the entire left edge and saying, let's just generate this new left edge and see what we get. I'd rather say, let's kind of work with it in pieces and say, this is the size of the canvas I want. Because if we roll back to the beginning of the conversation here, when I say break down my image compositionally and say I'm going to use a Fibonacci spiral, this is where my main subject's going to be, and I have a beautiful face, or maybe the start of a beautiful face, and I want it about here, and I'm going to put some mountains or a lake or whatever it is that I want to make, I'll kind of sketch that in, and then I want to go in and I want to in-paint that as I'm moving. And so there's a bunch of different ways to do that. NVIDIA has their abstract environment generation tool, which is pretty cool. You use a rough idea of what you want, it'll generate the JPEG for you, and you can just download that and then include that in Photoshop. That's fine. But I want to be able to continue. Like, so maybe I want some flowers in here and kind of work my way through the composition just like a painter would. So in other words, I have a brush that when I'm brushing is painting in those details. And there's been a lot of tools that are getting close to that. Dream Studio, for example, which I really enjoy the product, which is one of the reasons I think I wanted to work for the company, is that product is fantastic. And it may not be the free product that everyone's all excited about, but it creates images that I think are clean, and the ability for me to continuously in-paint and explore them is really refreshing to me. So I like that aspect of that a lot. And I think that's the part that excites me, is I want to be able to almost paint with them. Now, when I'm done, I'm still going to take that into a painting application. So I really like to paint inside of, as I said, Rebel or Corel or Photoshop and add other elements. I will go out and take photos of flowers in my yard or in the city, create stock imagery of those items and then drop them in over the top of my photos to add depth of field, additional volumetrics, to get the idea of, say, that there's leaves blowing in the background, where requesting that in the AI prompt is not going to be possible because you've got only so many tokens. And by the time you've added all these little tiny nuances, the prompt is so large that it's just not going to end up being any feasible thing. I think the shorter prompts tend to turn out better answers, just as my personal opinion. So as a photographer, I see AI art adding to what we're doing substantially. I'll go back to this. There we go. I see the AI art adding to that substantially in us being able to take imagery that we photograph and then augment it with AI generated items. So if I shoot, say, a really common example be a bride. So we go out and photograph a bride and she's beautiful, but the day isn't great. And you say, well, I wish there were some flowering trees, or maybe she's on, just in a city, and you say, I wish she would be on some big manor house in England that no longer exists in the 1500s. You could do that. And kind of those tools or that method right now is in its infancy. It's difficult to use. The masking and some of that has come a long way. There's a couple different masking tools now that work with the automatic 1111 example that work pretty well, but the ability to, say, pass objects in front of or create a depth of field is probably my biggest pain right now, because we have no transparency. You want to be a rock star at this. If you guys are looking for something wildly fantastic, the ability to create Like just a good example, field of flowers with a transparency so that I can place it in front of something would be nutty. Like that would be wow factor kind of stuff for me, because I'm trying to take and incorporate an image. And again, the process of me building it makes me happy. I'm that oddball who likes to play inside of Photoshop, and it's relaxing to me. It's kind of akin to taking painting and paintbrush and just painting on an easel, except I get to do it digitally. So that's my diatribe for the moment. Any questions on that whole rant?
Currently, we don't have any questions on the Twitch chat, so I assume everything was clear so far.
Okay. So give me some examples of some of the challenges you guys think that we're facing that perhaps I might be able to answer. Like, are there some things that you're wondering, is this a good direction? Are these some ideas that we're having? Bounce it off of me and see, where I end with it. This thing is moving so fast, which I just find amazing. You think of how many releases of software how many releases a piece of software has over the course of a year, and you may get one or two, and now we're looking at one or two a day. Just the pace of development is just staggering, and I love it. It's moving so quickly, but there's not a lot of love for it too in some industries. The art industry in general, I think, kind of looks downward at it because I don't think they understand it yet. They still think it's a copyright violation, and they misunderstand how diffusion works. Or in the photography industry, they're upset because they're like, well, these can we copyright imagery that is all digital or mostly digital, with the exception of just the photograph of the person in it? There's a lot of challenges we have legally through this whole thing too that I think are complicating things or making it more difficult. If this was just acceptable to everyone, this would be a lot easier. But right now we've got this strange, like, what do you want to do with it? How you want to handle it? The other aspect of this is the sale or what you do with it. I kind of mentioned that earlier. I'm like, so you create this great piece of work. You prompted it, or you've played with it in Photoshop or whatever you've done. You have now a piece that is finished. Like, all the hands look real, the faces are good, everything is fine. What are you going to do with it now? I think that's the next challenge. Is right now, so we're just kind of creating it. And I don't know how many thousands you have on your hard drive, but I have a lot of them on here. And it's a matter of what to do with them. So some thoughts on that, just because I'm waiting for some questions from you guys too, but I'll just kind of give you my thoughts on that. So I actually hang things in galleries. So I have galleries that carry my work, and then those galleries sell the art. Then it's printed on canvases or metal or print. And note that galleries typically take between 30 and 50% of the commission for the piece. So you have to print them very nicely. I mean, you can't use like a discount lab or something like that for printing, or you can't print them yourself. You have to pay somebody to print them very nicely. So it's going to cost some money, but then you can also move that piece for a lot more money. So a gallery can sell a piece of photography for me from anywhere from, say, $750 to $3,500 US. Now note that they still get to keep 30 to 50% of that, because that's how galleries stay awake. And, obviously do the business, feed their families. Then selling things online, which I'm not as excited about, but I think there's room for that, easily room for that right now. So you guys are all on the cusp of this. This is just starting out, and the general population still kind of has an idea that it's happening, but hasn't really kind of looked at it. And I think that's awesome. I mean, to say this is so early on in this process, selling that art online, I think, is a pretty good opportunity right now. And then the whole NFT thing with the crypto market doing whatever the crypto market is doing on any given day is a little bit more difficult. Plus, it kind of got, I'm going to say personally, I think it kind of got spoiled by all the horrific art that came out, say 6 months ago to a year ago, when that whole rush of collectibles came out and everybody was making horrific ape illustrations and then selling them for outrageous amounts of money, which the first set was actually nicely done. But after that, it became just this desperate ape anything by anybody, and it became horrible. It is now harder for us to create good art and now take it into that market, because if you look at places like OpenSea, they're so buried with horrible art that now if you create something fantastic inside of your AI, you try and upload it, it's now one of 25 million images that are now stuck on there. So had this happened before the other one, I think the whole NFT market space would look a lot more different than it does today, just in my humble opinion. So.
Okay, so we've got questions in the chat, and so the first question is, do you think that AI will replace most of photo editors?
Oh, no, not at all. I think it's, in a lot of ways, at least in my mind, it works very much like stock photography. So if I'm working on something and I have a picture of a girl, she's on a swing or something, and I need a tree that's in bloom in the background, I'll go to a stock photo site, maybe by Adobe, or it could be Unsplash or something like that. Find a photo of the tree I want, download the tree, and then just mask it into that image. This is no different, except that I'm able to actually ask for the tree that I would like and hopefully get something that is close to what I'm looking for, or more often than not, a really happy accident where I'm like, wow, this is not what I was thinking, but I like it a lot more than what I had in my head, which is the thing I get excited about with the whole AI art generation part. So to me, it doesn't replace it all. It just becomes another source of imagery. At least that's the way I'm looking at it. And it seems to work that way for me currently. If I want something, I just go generate it. And as I said, I use that tool from NVIDIA for creating environments. I think that works great. I'll use Quixel Megastands. I'm adept at Blender, so I'll go into Blender. If I need to make something specific perspective-wise, I can feel free to do that. But I see this as almost replacing that skill set. Like, do I still need to use Blender? Only in situations where the perspective is so touchy that maybe I have to kind of force it, or I'm looking for a very specific type of architecture or kind of composition that I can't just roll the dice repeatedly at AI. I need to kind of go get it. I tell a lot of people, like when you're making AI art and you're asking for something because you know in your head exactly the image you want, don't prompt it. Just pick up a pen or pencil or a paintbrush and go make it. Like, that skill isn't dead at all. But it's the happy accident generator that AI art is, I think, is the part that it's helping artists skip the ideation and sketch phase. So when we're creating much bigger pieces and we want some specific piece of art because we have an idea, this kind of helps us give us ideas when we get stuck. I know if you draw or you paint, you're like, what do I draw? I don't know what to draw today. Well, that just got solved. So finding something here and then taking it and learning from it or augmenting it, I think, is really exciting.
Thank you for that. Another person is asking if you could reveal some really good prompt insights. What's the keywords that create awesomeness?
So I'm a big fan of short prompts. I think almost every one of these is under 15 words. I laugh really hard when I see a lot of people who use all the negative prompts, like the disfigured or long neck or ugly bad art. And they have this huge list of negative prompts. Those don't do anything really, because if you think about it, like when we get two heads, for example, if you know why that happens, you've got two grids of 512, let's say, for example, or 256 or whatever you're using as your base size, and you're asking for something that's taller. It's making two images on top of each other, so you're getting two heads, but you're asking for one head. It still sees only one head, but it sees one head twice. So I think those really long negative prompts really don't do anything. And if you remove them, bet you get kind of the same amount of accidents where those ugly hands or whatever happen. The whole hand thing drives me absolutely nuts, as I'm sure it does everybody else. That's the thing right now that I have to go and handle, pun intended. So I have to go and get those. And DALL-E actually right now is very good at hands. So sometimes I use that as my panacea for, disfigured limbs or what have you. As far as other prompts go, keeping them short helps. Obviously, knowing the priority of your prompt. So you've got, stronger words on the left versus the right. So being able to move your prompt or moving your words in amongst its brethren to decide whether you want to turn the volume up on a term or down on a term is helpful. I tend to also look at the artists as I never want one artist. Like I see this whole Greg Rutkowski and Alphonse Mucha thing. They're very different artists and their work is very different. The combination of the two doesn't look like either one, but the combination of the two is kind of overdone right now. So I don't use either one of those two artists. Now, I do like their work independently, but I always use more than one artist as well, because I think that this is a really great way to irritate the world right now and to imitate someone's work. I've seen some models that have come out that, like the Disney model, for example, that's only going to get you in trouble. Because yes, it's cute and everything, but now you're looking at a logistical problem, a legal problem, I should say. where if you're smashing together multiple artists that you enjoy their work, you're going to create an amalgamation which is refreshing and won't look like everyone else's work, and then no one will ever know who those artists are. I think one of the coolest ways to do this is to take an artist that does a specific thing. Let's say architecture. You have an artist that you really love, or a photographer who does architecture, and that's all they really do. So when you're trying to make a photo of, say, a portrait of a woman, and you're using that artist, you're going to find it difficult to get a woman out of that. You're going to end up getting buildings because that person doesn't draw women. So combining them together with somebody who maybe draws women and someone who does architecture, you get this really weird situation where you'll get lots of buildings, and all of a sudden you'll get one picture that'll have a woman in it. And I find those to be the more interesting ones. Like they pop up all of a sudden. You're like, well, I don't know where that head came from, but it's like the most beautiful face. So I have this whole collection, like we talked about earlier about the double head thing. I have a whole collection of those because those heads are both rendered at the maximum resolution of that area of the diffusion. So they look fantastic. So when you get that one where they're full body, but they're smaller in the frame and their face is all messed up, like grabbing one of those larger heads and scaling it down and fixing it on there, it's one of the things that we fix. In painting at full resolution tends to help with that as well. But again, masking becomes a problem. You get the head looking the wrong direction, or it just it's bigger than the mask area that needs to be. Some of those are common problems right now, I think, that everyone's running into. Masking hands and masking faces is pretty much everybody's problem right now. At least my opinion.
Yes, so you mentioned about hands that look far from perfect, and also someone in the chat mentioned that faces look as if they are glitched, right? And do you have an answer to the question, why does it happen?
Well, I think that it all boils down to how the original samples were taken. So the cropping of the heads happens because when we crop, we have to remember we sample everything, or we when we're building our models, we have all of our cropped imagery that we're using. So we need to reuse squares for training our models, and those squares have to pick a place to crop. And I think that it was kind of quickly done. The focusing on the subject maybe not as good as it could have been. So the face obviously was maybe fine, mostly in frame, but the top of the head was always lost. Or if the person's smaller in the frame, it's just a matter of resolution at that point. Because if you have a small face and you've got it represented by, say, a 512 square or a 256 square, depending on how your model was trained, there are only so many pixels that represent that person's face from that distance. So it becomes just more or less a matter of available pixels. And so the smaller the person is, the weirder their body is going to get, because we don't have the pixels to represent the human proportion properly. At least that's my theory on this. When you get a face that almost fills the entire frame, I think it turns out to be pretty nice. Like any of these here turn out pretty nice, but they're also taller. And I find that you roll the risk of making the taking it away from the square and rolling it into a more portrait or landscape oriented image. You end up with duplicates, which again, I don't tend to throw them away because they tend to be, again, full resolution, even if the two of them are in the same frame. But again, how often does that happen? Maybe 20 or 30% of the time. And there's a high res fix available with the automatic 1111 version, for example, which makes kind of a blurry first attempt at using a low resolution model where it doesn't expect there to be two stacked samples. And then it just kind of takes it increases the size of that latent space and then goes back and tries to resample it. That seems to work pretty well, but now we have to sample images twice in order to get there. And I don't know that it works all the time either, because sometimes I'll see the first image pop up and it's not one that has an error, but it's really good. And then it gets completely re-rolled by the sampler running it through the second time. So I think that the cropping of the original trained models was really the issue, and it cropped a lot of heads off. Same with full bodies. You don't see a lot of full bodies that are practically They're not anatomically. They're just not anatomically correct because, again, how they were cropped and going through that whole mess. I think that as this progresses and we're able to sample larger models, for example, or have larger samples into our models, this won't become as big of an issue. But upscaling right now is a matter of trying to add details that were missing in the original. And that's really a problem, especially again that figure that's so small in the frame, but it's beautiful. Like the rest of the scene is great, and you got this twisted thing. Yeah, that's tough. But again, it's resolution. You just don't have it. Now these are obviously I am not doing the AI work. So these are my guesses, and or at least how I'm fielding how things are working. So don't take that as law. There, this is just my guess or my interpretation of where this comes from.
Thank you for that. Another question is, have you ever counted how much time using AI saves you every day?
I have not. I don't know that it saves me any time right now. The reason being is I'm getting so many good images out of it that I have this wait list now of things that I want to work on. Like I'll get a beautiful image and everything's good except I have an extra arm, and I need to go in and I need to remove that in Photoshop. The idea of Dream Booth, which I really love, being able to train it on different friends or what have you, or my wife, just train things and then make art based on her is really cool. So I think it's actually creating more tasks for me, although they're labors of love, right? They're not work that I have to do. If I look at it from a client perspective, from a photographer's perspective, we judge our business on how many pieces, or at least I judge my business on how many pieces I can sell you that you're going to hang on your wall. So say I take a picture of you and your family, or you and your dog, or you and your girlfriend or wife, and you hang it on the wall. That's where photographers make money. And it's where, you walk by that picture every day and you see it. It's your wife and your husband, or it's your life, and you get to see it on the wall. As a fine art person, my goal is to kind of create the next level of that. Let's say take you and then make you into a fairy in a garden. And that type of imagery is the type of person that I attract. So I'm not so much a family photographer as I am a fine art photographer. A lot of my clients are women who have breast cancer diagnosis, and they come to me to have the photo shoot before they go through that horrible surgery and life-changing event. And oftentimes that involves creating some really interesting art that's going to hang on the wall forever. And I want those to be fantastic. And the ability for AI to kind of hand me stock imagery or ideas that I had never had or would never have had opens the door for me to sell more products. So at the end of the day, it's making more work for me, but it's giving me ability to make art that I would never have been able to, or probably would not have thought of. But it is saving me time from the aspect of generating the kind of the sketch, the rough outline of where I want to go. It's that whole, I don't know what to draw today, gets solved for me a lot of time. That I don't think there's going to be such a thing as a painter's creative block or an artist's creative block ever again at this point. Because if you don't know what you want to make, it's like, I don't know what to prompt. Well, there are now random cards or random wild cards. There's a randomization scripts that run inside of all these things that I don't know what to make. Well, let's just make some stuff, and then something will pop up that's inspirational, and then you can go from there. And that's one of the things I do on my YouTube channel is I just kind of like sit there and I'm like, I don't know what I want to do today, but we're going to try and work our way through some sort of AI art challenge I've given myself or I'm part of. And it's that part that I really enjoy. I don't think it saves me any time.
Another question is, where can we use AI generated artworks? Board games or computer games seems obvious. Do you have any other on mind?
Well, a couple things to keep in mind there. So board games themselves, I do not believe you can copyright the game itself, how it works, its mechanics. Like, for example, I'm working on a custom Catan board now. I have a laser cutter, and I'm kind of making some projects with that. Those are all things that I've made. I haven't made inside of AI art yet, but there's ideas in there of things I want to do with AI and the laser cutter, which is a whole different world I want to explore. But you can copyright the mechanics of a game and not the imagery. So be able to take that and make something you're right. That is a great idea. As I said before, the selling of NFTs and the selling of prints for walls, I think is also a no-brainer. As far as the game world goes, I would be careful because I think right now the game design world is suffering from just almost like what the NFT world was doing earlier, when it's every brand of ape doing everything because everybody wants part of that wagon of let's make ape things and we'll make a lot of money. So it's like icons for guns, for example. I've seen a guy upload, he's like, here, I have 22,000 images of icons for guns that I made in Midjourney. And people are like, great, just another mess that someone's going to upload in there, and then we have to sort through this whole morass of trash instead of it being something that was well thought out, meticulously, done, and say these, go through that again, quality aspects of this. Is this the best icon for gun? Is this the best icon for gun? And go through it meticulously isn't happening right now. So I think my biggest fear is that we all have these really great ideas for things, but it's being crowded by all these people that just upload trash, and you're not going to see the forest for the trees. It's going to be very difficult to garner someone's attention and say, I took time to make these, and now they're really quality things. You're kind of getting lost in that. And that's one of my bigger fears with this. AI is so attainable, and it allows anybody to really create anything, that there's going to be people who take time to make something quality and to think through their prompt. And there's going to be that group of people that don't. What prompt did you use? Use the same prompt and just generate 25,000 more of those and upload them. That's a battle we're going to be having. The ability to kind of grade through the quality of these things. So no matter what industry you attempt to move your AI art in, you're going to have that same group of people that are just uploading as fast as they can and not as carefully as they can. Same with photography. You have a lot of people who they take every photo. If you look at my website, I have a lot of photos in the front of my website. Now, that's because I've been doing it a long time. But if you look at a lot of other photographers, they also have a lot of photos in their website. And this is an important point. Don't show work that isn't your best work. So a lot of photographers are like, well, I don't have a black and white in the front of my website, so I just grab this one, which is the best one I have, even though it's not great, but it now shows I shoot black and white photography. And I think that's exactly the wrong way to look at it. You're looking at like, now you're showing a photo or an object that is mediocre, and you're saying, hey, look, I can make black and white mediocre images, is the way you're looking at it. So when the AI universe, when we're looking at this, if you look at my Twitter feed, for example, it's all highly polished, thought through pieces of work that I have photoshopped and taken my time to maybe it came out really great from AI to begin with, and I could have run with it. That's the type of thing, and the only type of thing I will ever show. All the other stuff on my hard drive that I started saving, I look back like, a month or 2 months ago when I was just starting with Midjourney, and I look at some of the stuff I saved going, wow, this is really great. This is really great. And I look back now and I'm like, why did I save this? That growth thing, being careful and creating a portfolio of only your best work is critical, and to continuously reevaluate that. Because if you're going to take it and do something with it, if you're looking to grow as a career in game design or texture design, textiles, creating patterns for fabrics is another huge opportunity, because that's done all the time. And like, I live very close to a company called Kohl's, which has stores throughout the United States. I'm not really sure if they're in Europe or elsewhere in the world. But they have thousands of stores, and they have a lot of fabric designers and textile designers on staff. And I think this adds opportunity to them to say, hey, I want to try and create some new things in that area. So anything physical, from wallpaper design to fabrics to, there's a website called Spoonflower, and Spoonflower will let you upload an image, and then they will turn and make it into a fabric that you can then sew. So that's pretty cool. There's a lot of really neat opportunities out there. I'm sure that I'll think of more over time, but again, this is just the start of where we are now. We're visual, but you've got other systems that are doing sound and songs that are coming soon. You can see Emad from Stable AI gets all excited when he talks about it during his casts. He's got a lot of other areas he's trying to grow this, and protein folding as well. Well, that's creating of DNA solutions for world's medical problems, and that's been around for a long time, and something again only a human could do. So just outside of, don't just think of SADA in AI art. There's a lot of other AI areas that same skill set, even though it's not visual, it's the same skill set being applied in different ways or different permutations. So there's a lot of room for people who have skills in this area. So don't just think just visually. There's a lot of other places where this could be very handy.
Thank you. Another question. What do you think about AI interpreting your texts or idea that you give to it? Do you get what you had in mind right away, or always have to try many times to get it right?
I think I've gotten better. I do love, as I said, I love the happy accident. It gives me something I did not expect. I really enjoy that. And again, normally that's my choice of artist as it comes down to. I picked an artist whose style I enjoy, but maybe they don't make the type of object that I'm getting, or the type of object that I want, and I end up getting a permutation of that. But I like that happy accident. I'm getting better at it. I think when I first started out, because Midjourney was also very new, and that was the first one I think most of us, learned about this, unless you were a Disco Diffusion user. You kind of started out, put in some stuff, and you got some answers, and you just kept adding to it. And I think now I've gotten more into a subtractive mode to say, I'm accepting that I'm not going to get exactly what I want, because if I know what I want, I should just go paint it. But if I have a rough idea of what I want, I'm open to its interpretation. And I find that really refreshing. It's very awesome to be able to have something that no one else will ever have, because of the way that I did it and the noise that I have, to have something that's very cool. I think I was so excited when I first learned about this. I did a YouTube video on it, and I was exploding. I looked like a kid in a candy store. I was like, I can't believe this even exists. And now it's like several months later, and it just gets better every day. I can't imagine where we're going to be in a year from now. They say the total of all human knowledge doubles every 11 years. And I think we just blew that out of the water, because this has more than doubled. I think once a month it doubles in its capability and its reach and our understandability of it. Some of the prompt crafting tools that are out there, I think when they first started out, they had the total wrong idea of what to do. And I think a lot of people have learned a lot. And some of those tools have come along. I know that there are other ones in development that I have seen that I'm very excited about, because I don't spell very well. So oftentimes a misspelling will lead off to another, very strange accident. And some of those things are helpful. But the whole AI interpretation of English or any other language at this point is still not great compared to, say, something like the Bloom model, which is based on like the Gutenberg corpus. It's got all of the languages in it, including a bunch of programming languages, which is where, things like CodePilot and other products are based on things like that. I'm excited to see where we're going to go with it next. The whole prompting adventure, the whole prompt engineering vertical market, that skill set is a very real thing now, especially when you get into more of the business side of it. Can you incorporate your business records, say your customer satisfaction surveys, for example, with the Bloom model, and then be able to prompt into that to get answers back that would help management make decisions? I mean, that is any time that a business makes money based on those types of things, it's a skill set that they're willing to spend money on. Because it's helping them be better as a business. So the whole prompt engineering thing is it's a very real thing. And in 5 years, I think it'll be a very, very nice, very nicely paid area if you're good at it. I don't know that I will be, but we'll see.
While mentioning prompt engineering, I would like to redirect our viewers to our Stable Diffusion website, where we linked to the submission from previous hackathon, where a winner created a prompt engineering tool with Cohere's API. So this tool is meant for you to learn to be better prompt engineer while using Stable Diffusion. And another question. We've seen more and more music videos created with AI, even by Die Antwoord. Do you think it's just a moment trend, or it will be a new thing in the creative industry?
I think right now we're excited about it because it is new. As it gets to be more and more out there, I think we're going to get tired of it. Unless, and I'm sure this will happen, we end up with something that is even more exciting or interesting than it is today. Like, it's very cool right now, but I'm already kind of getting tired of them. The interpretation of the original video to the AI augmented version is interesting. But there has to be something else in there to cause me to say, this is something that, again, what can I do with it? I don't just play with this art for my sake. I mean, I do, but not full time. This is my full-time job. For years now has been creating visual imagery, and that feeds my family, pays my car payment, pays my house payment. Making videos that are really interesting with like Deforum or any of the other tools that are out there is fine, but you also have to be aware that at some point someone has to do this and make a living from it. What do those look like? And I think that's when we're going to really start to see this grow and mature quicker. Because right now it's just fun to play with, but no one's really making money at it. Or at least some people are probably making money at it. But we're all in a position right now, we're early enough in the game that we can. But be careful with adapting that and thinking that's not going to change, because it has to change. It's already kind of as I say, it's kind of already kind of looking somewhat the same to me. That's again, this is my personal opinion on it. I think there's definitely room for it, but it's how do you make money on who makes money on it, and how those people, you get their attention, and what products you can make that make them make money, because then they can pay you from it.